physicist. We are studying the Lagrangian formulation, and the very first topic of Lagrangian formulation is constraints. We will be studying what are constraints, why do we need constraints, and the classification of constraints in this video. Now let us read the definition of constraints. The limitations or restriction imposed on the motion of the particle, or when the motion is restricted by one or more conditions. Now, what does that mean? For example, we know that we have three coordinate axes, which are x, y, and z. Okay, this is x, this is z, and this is y. For example, I restrict the motion of a particle only in x direction. So what does that mean? We are imposing constraints on this particle, right? Now the question is, why do we need constraints? Now, as I have restricted the motion of this particle only in one direction, that is x, so how many coordinates are required to describe the motion of this particle? Only x coordinate is required to describe the motion of this particle. Now, for example, this particle is free to move in space. So how many coordinates are required to describe the motion of this particle? That is x, y, and z. So if we are restricting the motion, we are actually simplifying the mathematical calculations. Okay, we just talked about the number of coordinates required to describe the motion of a particle. Now we will be talking in terms of equation of motion instead of number of coordinates. Now one coordinate means one equation required to solve the problem, and two coordinates means two equations are required. Now suppose we have a system of n number of particles. So how many number of equation of motion are required to solve the mathematical description? That will be equal to degree of freedom. Let us read this. Imposing constraints on a mechanical system is to simplify the mathematical description such that the number of equations of motion are reduced to the same number as the number of degree of freedom. Now, what is degree of freedom? Degree of freedom is the number of independent ways in which a mechanical system can move without violating any constraint which may be imposed. So I will come back to this formula a little later. Let us try to understand this. Suppose we have a particle number 1. It can move in three possible directions, that is x, y, and z. Suppose we have another particle 2. It can also move in three possible directions, that is x, y, and z. I made it the two coordinate axes differently because the two particles might not necessarily have the same frame of reference. Suppose we have a system of these two particles. Now the number of directions required to describe the motion of the system will be 3 into 2. 3 is the number of possible direction of one and the number of particles. Now suppose we have another particle 3. It can also move in three possible directions, x, y, and z, x, y, and z. Now suppose we have a system of these three particles. We can describe the number of directions required to describe the motion as 3 into 3 equal to 9. Now for n particles, we can say that we require 3n number of directions to describe the motion. Now suppose we apply constraints on them. How many constraints? We apply k number of constraints on it. Now the number of equations of motion required will be 3n minus k. I will explain you with a very simple example which we just studied a few minutes earlier. We have a coordinate axis x, y, and z, and we have a particle, and we have restricted its motion only in one direction, that is x. Okay, so we are applying two constraints on it. two constraints on it, that is it cannot move in y, it cannot move in z. And since we have one particle, n is equal to 1, so 3 into 1 minus 2 is equal to 1. So it has only one possible direction to move, and that is x. Okay, now let's come back to our formula. Degree of freedom f is equal to 3n minus k. Okay, so the next topic is classification of constraints. Before we start reading this, let me tell you something. There are several ways by which we can classify constraints. The first way is by considering time. The second way is by considering velocity. The third way is by considering equality. And the fourth way is by considering work done. You don't actually need to make this, but you should know this. Okay, you can simply start writing. The first way, by considering time. Okay, first is scleronomic. Scleronomic constraints are those constraints which do not explicitly depend on time. For example, we have any function f which depends on x and y. It does not depend on t. Then this constraint relation is scleronomic. The second is rheonomic. If constraint relations depend explicitly on time, for example, this function is a function of x, y, and time t. So this is rheonomic. The second way of classification was velocity. Number one is holonomic. If constraint relations are or can be made independent of velocity, then the constraints are called holonomic. For example, this constraint f is a function of x1 and x2. It does not depend on velocity v. I think I should write with another pen. So it does not depend on velocity v, or it does not depend on x1 dot, as we say. Okay, so these two examples are holonomic, but if we revise the first part, we know that this is scleronomic because it does not depend on time t. But since this depends on time t, this is an example of rheonomic. The second way of classifying constraint on the basis of velocity is non-holonomic. If constraint relations are irreducible function of velocities. For example, this function is a function of the coordinate x1 and its velocity x1 dot. Then this is non-holonomic, and this function depends on the coordinate x1, velocity x1 dot, and time t, which makes it non-holonomic and rheonomic. This is non-holonomic and scleronomic. Now let's study the third way of classifying constraints, which is on the basis of equality. If the constraint relations are in the form of equations, then it is bilateral. For example, this function f is a function of x1, x1 dot, comma t. It is equal to 0. This equality sign states that this is bilateral. The second is unilateral. If the constraint relations are in the form of inequalities, for example, any function f of r is greater than a, this inequality makes the function unilateral. Okay. The fourth way of classifying was on the basis of work done. The first one is conservative. Now let us recall what is conservative force. The forces which do not do any work is called conservative force. Now the same definition would apply to this. If the forces of constraint do not do any work and total mechanical energy of the system is conserved. Now the example is a simple pendulum with rigid support. We remember from our knowledge of simple pendulum that when it is at its mean position, its kinetic energy is maximum. As it goes at a height, its potential energy becomes maximum. Here potential energy is maximum and here kinetic energy is maximum, but the sum of kinetic energy and potential energy remains conserved. So the system is conservative. The next is dissipative. If the forces of constraints do work and the total mechanical energy is not conserved. Example, pendulum with variable length. For example, in a pendulum, we take, instead of this thread, we take a spring. While it will move from one position to the other, the length of the spring will vary. This is an example of dissipative constraint. So we are done with our topic of constraint. In the next video, we will be talking about generalized notations.